Hello everyone, it's DuckFaden07. Today I got a pretty spicy brew. So we are trying to cascade Bloodbraid Marauder into Crushing Footfalls, making 2/4/4 tokens. And we are trying to do that as soon as turn 2 actually. So there is plenty of ways to do this turn 2. You can either cycle Architects of Will turn 1 to put Artifact plus creature. He's Artifact creature. And then you can force something on your opponent's turn and play turn 2 Bloodbraid Marauder. You can also go turn 1 Incubation Incongruity. This card is both instant and sorcery. Then either Fury something or Subtlety something in your opponent's turn, and then again go for Bloodbraid Marauder on turn 2 into Rhinos, which is pretty insane. Other than that, you only need a fetch to draw a fetch and put it into the graveyard. So that's it. Happens really a lot often than you would think. I had plenty of turn 2 Cascade Marauder into Rhinos. And the deck is pretty fun to play, and opponents are sometimes just they are really confused about what's going on, especially in the post-board matches when I board in the Living End. So we'll also see that. So a lot of free spells here. Also Incubation and Congruity help us dig for the Subtlety, for the Fury, for the Architects of Will help us get the Delirium. Also Territorial Cowl, 2 mana 5/5 creature that is really aggressive and also helps creating a Delirium for the Bloodbraid Marauder. So often you can go turn 2 Kabu, which attacks then for, let's say, 5 damage on turn 3, and discard the card into the graveyard, helps with the Delirium, and then go for the Marauder. So it's pretty synergistic. Okay, on the sideboard we have some Living End plan. Some more creatures to hit graveyard, artifacts, enchantments, a cascade, and more furies, and more counter spells. So that's it. So let's go to the gameplay and see how it went. I'll start with the match 3 because it was like the coolest one. I played a dozen of leagues with this deck, and I had multiple 4-1 leagues with it, missing the trophy each time by really it was really tight games. Okay, opponent goes for Ingenious Mid here. I decide to play to cycle the Architects of Will, find another one, exile it for the Subtlety. Then I already had Architects in the graveyard. And I played the counterspell on their Espen Sentinel because I didn't have more lands. I didn't want to let them draw cards. So with the counterspell, I had the Delirium, and I draw the Lorien Revealed for a turn, and get a basic island and play Marauder, getting 2 Rhinos. So 11 power on turn 3 plus Subtlety, opponent's Urza Saga, and opponent immediately concedes. Next turn I will be able to like tap their land, so they maybe wouldn't be able to play the Urza again. Opponent concedes on second Subtlety. Pretty disgusting start for the deck. Okay, so this one I was playing second. Opponent plays the Esper Sentinel, and yeah, double Esper Sentinel, which was great for the Fury in my hand. So I decide just to go for the Kawu on turn 2. And yeah, wait maybe until they play something else. Unfortunately, I draw the Living End for turn, which is not really what I wanted, but I still have another one in my deck, so it's okay. I decide to wait with the Fury, let them create a construct, and then I decide to play the Binding on their construct. Hoping they play just another creature on their turn, or maybe just create another construct, which was like exactly what they did. They find Soul Guide Lantern, exiling for my graveyard because I had that, they saw the living end. So now I go for the Fury. I deal 2 to the construct and as per Sentinels. So all of their creatures die. I put a Fury in my graveyard. I'm now really close to. I can now cast the Marauder for 2 mana and play the Living End if I want. So basically, I was in a pretty good situation here. I was just hoping for them to maybe play some creatures or maybe kill my creatures, something like that, so I can just play the Living End. I cycle the Architects of Will, find the Foundation Breaker. So on my turn, I go for attacks with Kau. I didn't want to let them untap with Engineer, so that was the reason why I went for the Marauder, bringing back all my creatures, Fury killing their Sentinels, Foundation Breaker killing their Portable Hole, and Architects of Will looking at the top cards in their library. Still ahead of Fire Ice in my hand, and opponent concedes. That was it. Okay, so let's now go with match 1. Okay, so this was a cool game against Hammer Time. Let's say this one. Okay, I had Incubation Incongruity here. And a Fury in hand, which means potential of going turn 2 Marauder into Rhinos. I find Territorial Cowl, so in case I can pitch cast a Fury on my turn. But since opponent didn't play anything, it was kind of waste to not just play the Cowl. So I decided to play the Cowl, hold the Force of Negation on their turn. I still have ability to cycle with Cowl on the attacks and just cast the Marauder. Opponent plays the Fatal Push. I have my Force of Negation here. So I decided also find a counterspell, which is great. So I just decided to go for the discard here. Discard the Fury and just cast the Marauder, a Cascade into Footfalls, putting total of 11 power on the field, plus this 4 means lethal for the next turn. I also had a Force of Negation backup, so pretty brutal game, and my opponent concedes entire match actually. So that was it, match 2. Let's go check out the match 3. Match 3, it was against Tron. So we'll see how that went. I kept one lander here because I had the ability to cycle the Architects of Will. Maybe it wasn't a good decision, but I decided to try to go for it. I played the Incubation Incongruity and unfortunately missed. So I had a few versions of this deck, and some of them played more creatures than in this current variant. I had a Generous Sense instead of Lorien's Revealed, also to help with Incubation Incongruity, but found that you are still going to sometimes just miss with Incubation Incongruity, but it's still such a good card for a deck that you kind of, it's a really good enabler and you got to play it regardless. Well, I didn't have much place here. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find the Marauder. My opponent at this point, they don't know that I can play the Marauder even with the Relic on the field if I have if I have Delirium. I put Karn on top, but they draw a card. Sorry, yeah, they draw a card and just replay the Karn again, finding I think Sundering Titan. Yes, so I was able to attack the subtlety there, attack the Karn, kill the Karn, counterspell the Titan, and still untap with the Leyline Binding and the Force of Negation in hand, plus the Fury. I decided to just attack for 3 and hold the Force. I let them resolve the Stirrings, and unfortunately they find the Ulamog. Ulamog was pretty good there. So I was able to attack for 3, and I had the binding for the Ulamog, but still, Ulamog was a large problem regardless, and my draws just weren't very good. So opponent next turn went for the Ulamog, killing my Subtlety and my Black Source. As I said, I had the option to just binding it, but yeah, opponent ended up having Boseiju in the end and finishing the game with Illamok. Unfortunately, I top decked a couple of lands from the top in a situation where I really needed something better. And yeah, this Oblivion Stone was very good for the opponent, killing my Fury. Also, getting back their Ulamog, I found a Territorial Kabu, which gives me another turn to try to draw something. But yeah, that didn't help, and yeah, the game was soon over. So let's check out game 2. Okay, in the game 2, I kept a pretty decent hand. I had a couple of counterspells, subtlety, Architects of Will. So counterspell plus Architects means Delirium. So I also had a binding, pretty good hand, I would say, and a subtlety. So if I draw a Marauder, I'm just in a really good situation. I just removed 2 incubations, 2 furies to bring in some tier sunders. And yeah, I was able to play Counterspell on their turn, as I said, cycle Architects and get the Rhinos on the field. Also now I had Counterspell, Subtlety, plus Binding and Force available, so this was basically overkill. My opponent just wasn't able to do anything in a situation like this, so this was a kill. Okay, let's check out game 3 against Tron. Pretty brutal hand. So I had Delirium enablers ready. I just kind of needed to draw that Marauder, and I got it, which made the hand pretty brutal, and that was easy win. So let's check out game 3 against Tron. Opponent starts with the Chromatic Star. Again, I have a double counterspell plus double binding and a force of negation, Architects of Will. So I kind of just need. I have option to just also maybe play Marauder turn 2 here, if I can find it with the Architects. So I cycle one of the Architects and decide to force the Stirrings. Opponent played the Relics, so I wasn't able... I lost my Delirium. Opponent... I countered the Stirrings, I countered the Expedition map, and at this point opponent wasn't able to get the throne going. So I found the territorial cow. This was really important to find some kind of creature to start applying pressure. So I started drawing, discarding, find Xander's Lounge here. I had a counterspell ready to counter the Sylvan Scrying. And now I also got the Stomping Grounds. So now I was able to hold the Subtlety too. Subtlety was great here because opponent was on 13. This means if I play Subtlety now, I can put my opponent on 5, which means they got to kill the Kavu next turn because it's little damage. So I go for another attack here, doing more discarding, drawing. I play another Kavu, hold the binding on their turn. Opponent can't get rid of all these creatures, and that is a GG. Okay, so that was. We will leave the defeat for the last. Let's check out the win number 4 in match number 4. Again, I decided to keep one lander because of the Architects of Will. Architects of Will plus Force of Negation. I had also opportunity to subtlety this ornithopter, but there just wasn't need to do this. I draw a second land. This means a turn 2 Bloodbraid Marauder. I also still holding a subtlety backup, which I decide to cycle first. I needed to cycle first the architects to have the Delirium for turn 2. I didn't get the blue card for subtlety, but I had Delirium, so I was able to go turn 2 Bloodbraid Marauder, which is pretty brutal. Still a turn 3 Kawu, and the subtlety in hand for the later was pretty good. Opponent blocks with construct, gives it protection, but I put the Kawu on the field for the blocks. I already countered a Cigar Aid on turn 1, which was pretty important right now, because now they would have a Hammer plus Shadow Spear equipped and their constructs. So they have now had the 5/5 constructs on the field, so I needed to wait a bit. Opponent decides to go for the attacks. I double block with the Rhinos. They don't give it protection, but instead just equip the second construct. I cycle one of the architects. Now I have the ability to make Kawu a 5/5 if needed. Still holding the subtlety. And I go for the binding, exiling the Giver of Runes. They let it happen, so they probably didn't have a protection spell. Finding another binding from the from attack was great. I had 2 interactions available, subtlety plus binding. If they decided to try to trade for this Kawu, I would be fine by that. Opponent plays the drum, plays the hammer, makes their construct 7/7. I play the binding on the construct and they decide to concede. That's it. Let's check out the game 2. Okay, so had a good board for this matchup. Had this the elemental that destroys the artifacts. I also boarded in the living ends. So living end should be pretty good against the hammer time. They went for the second Esper Sentinel. I was fine with this. I was hoping for incubation incongruity, maybe find me Fury or Bloodbraid Marauder. What both of these creatures would be very good. I had subtlety here, so I just decided to let them attack me with sentinels, hold the subtlety, cycle my architects. That's it. And unfortunately, I draw into my second living end, so this means Bloodbraid Marauder wasn't doing anything at this point, but I have a few of these. I have territorial cows in these situations when something like this happens, so I can always discard it from my hand and draw another card. But this doesn't help. This doesn't happen very often. At this point, I had the Delirium, but yeah, it was pointless because both of the living ends were in my hand. Still, I had Tear Asunder in hand. I had Fire Eyes to kill both of these sentinels, so it was decent situation for me. I go for the incubation. Opponent has another pierce, so nothing happens there. Now they find the Stoneforge Mystic, put Caldra into hand. I had Tear Asunder to exile Caldra. Really wanted to draw a land here to be able to Fire Eyes their Esper Sentinels. So I go for Fire Eyes in their upkeep. I try to kill both Sentinels. Opponent puts Caldra into field, which was fine. I still had Tear Asunder for the next turn. And unfortunately, these 2 living ends stuck there, but opponent finds Urza Saga. Still, my opponent top decked and I top decked too, so I had the solution both for Caldra and for the Urza Saga. So I was now in top deck mode, very low on life, 3 life, but I find the Foundation Breaker here. Opponent has the mana leak, so they continue to pressure me with their small creatures. And yeah, at this point it was pretty difficult. Did actually find the Fury, but I was missing one land to cast it, so that was game 2. Let's check out game 3. Okay, so in the game 3, had the Lorien revealed, and this is Snap Keep. I had the Fury, had double binding. It really doesn't get much better than this. So I have land Lorient plus Architects of Will for easy Delirium too. So I have basically everything here. I also have Living Ends available for me. So I go Temple Garden, fetch the Steam Vents with the Lorien, and just jam my Cow on turn 2. Cow is also just very synergistic in this deck. It's very aggressive creature, but also helps with helps find the Bloodbraid Marauder, helps get the Delirium. I wasn't. They had Lavinia, so my bindings, furies were dead. So my plan was just to try to fire the Lavinia. That was my main goal here. So end of turn, I have two of those. So I try to end of turn kill it, but they had um, they had a solution. Uh, Incubation find me a subtlety, and my opponent taps out, so I use this situation to get rid of the Lavinia. Now I have Leyline Bindings online, and I have opportunity to play the Subtlety if needed. Opponent goes for the second Lavinia, and I definitely wanted to use the Subtlety for this one. So they played Lavinia, so this means they weren't able to get the to create a constructor this turn. So I was just continuing to fill my graveyard. I had already Fury there, Subtlety, Architects of Will, and I had a Marauder in hand. So I was just waiting for them to maybe put some creatures on the field so I can use the Living End. I didn't want them to use the Pierce, so I killed the creature so they don't have a mana with the Springleaf Drum. I make my Kawu a 5/5 here, exile the Gingerbread from the graveyard, and decide to go for the Bloodbraid Marauder, cast the Living End, uh, uh, look at the top cards of their library, put them back where I want it. So I have lethal for the next turn, plus control their top, so that was the game. Okay, that was it, the last win against Hammer Time, and we will now see how the burn matchup went. I have 3 Force of Negations, 3 counter spells in, plus Subtlety, plus Fury, so this matchup should be manageable. But unfortunately, I had Alexandra's Lounge plus a Forest available here. I went for the Subtlety on their Monastery Spear. I was hoping to get Incubation Incongruity at this point so I can cast my Marauder. Opponent suspends a double Rift Bolt, so I had a lot of options at this, a lot of good rows, but Fury wasn't one of them. I kind of blue card for the Force would be good, white mana for the Binding would be good, Incubation, Fire Ice, whatever. A lot of good spells, a lot of good rows here, but I find only the worst spells in this game 1. So at this point, I didn't have had my chance anymore. I did find the Spara here, white mana, and the second blue mana for the Force. But yeah, it was too late. I was already too low on life and had really low chance to try to stabilize. Still didn't have a second blue uh, card for the force. So I killed Goblin Guide to be able to hold mana for Force of Negation. They play double Searing Blaze, put me down on 4 life, and yeah, of course they had kill 6 damage in their hands. So that was it. Mana Color Screw, let's say, against Burn in a game 1. Was just too bad. So in game 2, I kept pretty good hand. I have option to go turn 2 Territorial Cavu, then maybe hold a counter spell on turn 3 or Subtlety. I'm just kind of one card away from a turn 3 Marauder into Rhinos. I decide to go for the headquarters here, play the Stomping Ground and play my Cavu. Still hold a Subtlety for their turn and hopefully untap and cast the counterspell. I go for the subtlety. Opponent puts Sanctifier on top. I discard one of the Marauders and find another land to be able to play the counterspell on their Sanctifier. Really didn't want to let this Sanctifier in the play. So opponent plays another land and puts me down on 8 life. Lorien revealed was a good draw here, enabled me to go for the Marauder on turn 4, which means opponent has to deal 8 damage immediately or they're dead. And they didn't have the kill, so that was game 2 against Burn. So let's check out the deciding game of this league. For the trophy, with this deck, I had to mulligan down on 6, decide to, yeah, this was one of the deciding factors, me putting down a Fury. If I kept the Fury, I would be able to kill the Guide immediately, which would save me a lot of damage, and probably I found another Fury, I would be able to cast it immediately. I found the Architects of Will with Incubation and Congruity. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to kill the Goblin Guide a turn before. So I had to ditch the Marauder right now to kill the Guide, but Guide already did a lot of damage, and unfortunately Burn had the Chalice of the Void, which to be honest I really didn't expect. Really didn't expect the Chalice. So I have solutions for Chalice. I have the Leyline of the Void, Leyline Binding, sorry, but wasn't really prepared. Okay, so at this point I had the counterspell plus Lorien revealed. And I decide to find my second Triumph and just hold the Force of Negation for their turn. Opponent was on 2 cards in their hand. Unfortunately finding Goblin Guide at this point, which was pretty good because I didn't have a solution for a creature. Had Bloodblade Marauder on top of my library, which is very good in case I find the binding, but I really need that binding to be able to get my Rhinos. If I can get the Rhinos online, it is a 2-turn clock with the Force of Negation backup, so it will surely seal the win for me. Unfortunately, just opponent suspends the Rift Bolt. Only 2 cards in their hands, so I can only suspect they have some kind of removal for the Rhino. They play the Rift Bolt, target me. I go for the counterspell and still hold the Force of Negation. Yeah, but these guys really did a lot of work in this game, and finally I got the land from the guy the first time in this entire match. And I was able to play Sacred Foundry, put my fourth land down, and finally had the fire to kill this Goblin Guide. The second one, which did like awful lot of damage. And Guide revealed the binding from the top. So this means I had the opportunity to go for the Marauder, and next turn I also had to force this Rolling Vortex. So kind of had everything I need. Just I kind of just need another top deck, and just for my opponent not to have much for two turns, because this is a two turn clock Marauder into Rhinos. But I'm of course on 6 life, which is really low. Opponent has the Path to Exile, which was pretty obvious they were saving something like this, and have the Searing Blaze, and yeah, this was crucial. I find the top deck, decent top deck, Incubation, Incongruity, and cast it, and unfortunately another miss. This doesn't happen that much, but yeah, a few times in the crucial situations like this one, I missed with Incubation, and if I got anything last turn, a Marauder, Kavu, even Subtlety or Architects of Will, all of these cards would win the game for me, but I completely missed. And what's worst, I had the counterspell on the top of my deck, and yeah, so opponent top decks the Bolt for the win, and I lost the trophy in a pretty sad way. And yeah, so I also played a couple more of very similar leagues, losing the trophy by really small margin. And yeah, the deck was really explosive and really fun to play. Just all these free spells used in a different, really fun way that enables you to go for a turn 2 Bloodbraid Marauder, which is really exciting and really worth it to lose that much cards from the hand. And this Incubation Incongruity just was really good enabler, and although it's a few times it missed and didn't find me anything, costing me the trophy in the end, but yeah, a really important card overall. So in the previous versions I had a Generous Ant in this slot to help with the creature count for the incubation. But yeah, Lorien was kind of more impactful because of the 3 force, 3 subtlety in the main, so I needed more blue cards to pitch. Also, it happened more often that I needed kind of sorcery in the graveyard than I needed a creature, because I only had 8 of these and a bit more creatures. So all of this because of this, I decided to go with the Lorien. And of course, also in the Generous Ant version, I ditched the Force of Negations and the Furies, and I tried the Geruda as companion. It was very doable, pretty good. Geruda won me a couple of games, but in the end I decided that I prefer the version with the Force of Negation in the main, and the Fury and the Lorien. So, and also Endurance on the side, stuff like that. So that was it. But yeah. My Jund opponents and mid-range opponents were really surprised by the Living End. I also kept it in for the Rhinos matchup and actually the Living End matchup itself. So I think it was very useful even in this video, but it was even more useful in some other matchups I tried it in, and it was really game breaking when the opponent just didn't expect me to have the Living End, and yeah, the Living End was complete blowout a lot of the time. So that is it. I hope you like the list, hope you like the gameplay. Friendly reminder to click like, subscribe, comment in the video, and that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.